श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमन डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन धाम की जय। ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। कृष्ण भक्त प्रदानी श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining our daily Srimad Bhagavatam study at ISKCON of Philadelphia. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. So today we are reading, studying and discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, text number 37. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
I'll recite the shloka 3 times. And then anybody who is interested may recite. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha gruhe tatatmani vibhavya loban rita himsanadi adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha gruhe tatatmani vibhavya loban rita sanadhi adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha gruhe tatatmani vibhavya loban rita sanadhi adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha grahe tathatmani vibhyaya lobhanrtajima hinsanadi adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat.
Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha grihe tatatmani vibhavya lophanvitajingha sahasanadi adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat.
Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha grihe tadatmani vibhavya lobhantrajihma himsanadya adharma chakram gamaniya paryadhat.
Hare Krishna. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha pure charashtre cha grihe tatatmani विधाय नवान्वितचितं सनात्या अधर्मचक्रं गमनाय पर्याधात्
युधिष्ठिरस्तात् परिसर्पणं बुधा पुरे च राष्ट्रे च गृहे तथात्मनि विभाव्य लोभान्वितजिह्महिंसनादि अधर्मचक्रं गमनाय पर्यधात्.
Hare Krishna. युधिष्ठिरस्तात् परिशापनं बुधा पुरे च राष्ट्रे च गृहे तथात्मनि विद्वायलवर्तजिम् हिंसानदि अधर्मचक्रं गमनाय पर्यदत्.
You are on mute, Prabhu.
Oh, Hare Krishna, sorry. Can you please scroll down, Mataji? Yudhishthira, Maharaj Yudhishthira, Tat, that, Parisarpanam, expansion, Buddha, thoroughly experienced, Pure, in the capital, Cha, as also, Rashtre, in the state, Cha, and Grihe, at home, Tatha, as also, Atmani, in person, Vibhavya, observing, Lobha, avarice, Anrata, untruth, Jimha, diplomacy, Himsana Adi, violence, envy, Adharma, irreligion, Chakram, a vicious circle, Gamanaya, for a departure, Paryadhat, dressed himself accordingly. Translation: Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital, state, home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home and he dressed accordingly. Purport: the present age is influenced by the specific qualities of Kali. Since the days of the Battle of Kurukshetra, about 5,000 years ago, the influence of the age of Kali began manifesting. And from authentic scriptures, it is learned that the age of Kali is still to run on for 427,000 years. The symptoms of the Kali Yuga, as mentioned above, namely avarice, falsehood, diplomacy, cheating, nepotism, violence, and all such things are already in vogue, and no one can imagine what is going to happen gradually with further increase of the influence of Kali till the day of annihilation. We have already come to know that the influence of the age of Kali is meant for godless so-called civilized man, those who are under the protection of the Lord. I'll repeat, we have already come to know that the influence of the age of Kali is meant for godless so-called civilized man. Those who are under the protection of the Lord have nothing to fear from this horrible age. Maharaj Yudhishthira was a great devotee of the Lord, and there was no necessity of his being afraid of the age of Kali. But he preferred to retire from active household life and prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas are eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore they are more interested in the company of the Lord than anything else. Besides that, being an ideal king, Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to retire just to set an example for others. As soon as there is some young fellow to look after the household affairs, one should at once retire from family life to uplift oneself to spiritual realization. One should not rot in the dark well of household life till one is dragged out by the will of Yamaraj. Modern politicians should take lessons from Maharaj Yudhishthira about voluntary retirement from active life and should make room for the younger generation. Also, retired old gentlemen should take lessons from him and leave home for spiritual realization before being forcefully dragged away to meet death. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kathamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm not at all qualified to speak, nor have any realizations. I seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas assembled on this call, and pray that I'm able to repeat whatever little bit I've heard and read so that I speak properly and don't make any mistakes. This is a very beautiful verse. This 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Anybody remembers what is the title of this chapter?
Pandavas retire timely.
Yes, Pandavas retire timely. And what is this verse talking about?
Retiring.
Yes, about Yudhishthira Maharaj retiring on time. It's a very beautiful verse. In the previous verses, we were discussing, how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, he left the earthly planet of yesterday's verse in the self-same form. And the moment that he left, from that very day, Kali had partially appeared, and then it became to fully manifest to create all kinds of inauspicious conditions for those people who are in ignorance, who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. Because as Prabhupada writes, for those who are fully developed in Krishna consciousness, for the pure devotees, the influence of Kali cannot be enforced upon them. Yeah. And by taking full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yeah, all the effects of Kali can be neutralized. Prabhupada writes in the purport for text 36. So, although we know that right after the war ended, the age of Kali began, just after the battle of Kurukshetra. But because the Lord was still present, it could not exert its influence. But then the Lord left the earthly planet, and as soon as he left, the symptoms of Kali Yuga were seen by Yudhishthira Maharaj. And why? Prabhupada uses the word Buddha in today's verse, and Buddha means, the word-to-word translation, Prabhupada gives the meaning as thoroughly experienced. And in the translation, he says Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough because he was thoroughly experienced. He was intelligent enough to understand the symptoms of Kali. Yeah, as we know, when Arjuna went to Dwaraka itself, right? Even before he returned from Dwaraka, Yudhishthira could feel all the bad omens. And Lord left the site, and he could feel all this. And here Yudhishthira Maharaj, in today's words, we can see is getting ready to go back home, back to Godhead. And where did he notice the influence of Kali? The verse is discussing. He noticed parisarpanam. That means it, what do you call? It pierced through, or it expanded. Where all did it expand? Pure, in the capital city. Rashtre, in the state. Grihe, at home. And where else? Tata Atmani. Prabhupada writes in that word-to-word meaning as in person. That means in individuals. So it started spreading or expanding everywhere. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, having noticed this, decided to retire timely. He decided to move out of his kingly responsibilities and eventually go back home, back to Godhead. And this is the title of the chapter also, as Mother Shobharadi just said. Pandavas retire timely. So two words are very interesting. One is retire and the other is timely. And this chapter and this verse is exactly focusing on these two words. I mean, at least Prabhupada gives a very nice purport, as all the purports, but in this particular purport, several points are discussed. Also, he discusses about the retirement of Yudhishthira Maharaj and the time at which he retired. So, the qualities or the characteristics of the Kali, age of Kali, are also discussed here briefly. Vibhavya Lobhanrata. So avarice, greed, diplomacy, cheating, quarrel. When two people together, then there is quarrel. And it's only one person, then there is hypocrisy. Yeah? And so much violence, cruelty. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the second chapter discusses the symptoms of Kali Yuga, and Vittam eva kalaunrunam janmachara gunodhaya dharmanyaya vyavasthayam karanam balamevahi. I'll read the translation. In Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. And law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. Balam eva hi. Yeah? So how do we know that a person has good qualities, good behavior, good characteristics, good character? The ways in this Kali Yuga, how much wealth the person has, and who will get justice. Law and justice is only for those who have power. So Prabhupada in that verse also gives a detailed purport about who is high class, middle class, and low class, not based on their knowledge, culture, and behavior, but based on their financial status. So anyway, we see everywhere in this Kali Yuga, all these characteristics are there. People are harmed and or killed like ants and flies. Everywhere, mercilessly killing happens, and power, so much corruption. I personally, I've been in India for a while, and I'll share a few things. But before that, I just wanted to give one short story, but a small this thing about greed. There was this one person which I was hearing, he a few years back or 3 years back, his grandfather died and left 1 crore of property for him. 2 years back, his uncle died, left 3 crores of property. Last year, his father died, left 4 crores of property. And now, he's sad and expressing to his friend, hey, the whole year has passed, nothing has happened still. This is the stage of Kali Yuga. So much greed is there everywhere. And we see even in this Mahabharata war, the whole Kurukshetra war, Duryodhan, when Krishna came on a peace mission and asked to give 5 villages, Duryodhan was not ready to give. He had the entire kingdom, but still he didn't want to give. Just to show an example of how greed leads to downfall. And I'm also personally, experiencing this. As I said, I've been in India for a few months, and I got somewhat entangled, I should say, with my father's farm in the outskirts of Hyderabad. And it's an ancestral property, and he's 80 years now. On the 15th of January he turns 80 years. And me and my brother both are in the United States, so they are old. And my father also had a lot of interest in farming, and he had a few acres of land. And now people have encroached. His own distant relatives have encroached a good portion of his land. And it is so corrupt system that I wanted to help my father. And I feel so helpless in this corrupt system. So it's only power and corruption. So if you are honest, straightforward, go for protection to law and justice, nothing happens. Nothing. So that's how the system is. And people who live here, who have lived around there in that village, they have mastered this whole corruption. So I told my father, at the most we can try, we try our best and, leave it to the will of the Lord. Whatever happens, happens. But then he was trying a lot, by himself, because he couldn't physically deal with those people. He went to the cops, gave so many complaints, no action. At the end, they say, just compromise and give it off. So the system is so corrupt now. I was seeing. Anyways, so I just remembered about avarice, and it's within family. His own uncles, they say, well, your sons are all educated and settled abroad, so just let go. You're an old man. Why do you need it? So, anyways, Yudhishthira Maharaj was seeing all these inauspicious things here. Adharma chakram. It is a vicious circle of irreligious activities, Prabhupada writes. So, chakram, a circle, and this Kali Yuga, the way it is, you make one mistake, you keep on making, you have to make one mistake after the other. The cycle of mistakes. You're forced to lie. And it's a cycle of lies. So you can see Yudhishthira Maharaj seeing all these inauspicious things, he chose to leave. And I was just, thinking how interesting this is from how this whole thing started. If you remember, Sutta Goswami answers all the sages in Naimisharanya. The question came up, why did Vyasadeva compile the Srimad Bhagavatam? So the 4th, 5th, and 6th chapters, answers these questions. Although Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedas, Puranas, yes, anybody remembers? first compiled all the Vedas and Puranas, what, of course, he was inspired by his spiritual master Narada Muni, but why was he not happy, or why was he despondent?
Because he didn't compile one that glorified the Lord.
Yes, yes. And wonderful. Yes, thank you. Any other comments? So he understood, that people in the age of the future, they might read these Vedas, they might read the Puranas, but they won't benefit from them. So he became very despondent, was not happy, and he wanted to do something. Yeah. And Narada Muni comes and gives instructions to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam, and as Mataji rightly pointed out, emphasize on devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. And in the 7th chapter onwards, we discuss how, he with the blessings and instructions of Narada Muni, he starts compiling. But the interesting journey is, how from why Sukadev Goswami only stayed for such a short period, stayed for so long. Then the discussion went to Parikshit Maharaj, then to Yudhishthira Maharaj. How come Parikshit Maharaj was such a great king? He left the kingdom, right? What happened that he had to give up his life at such a young age? And then Suta Goswami, to answer that question, comes to the end of Mahabharata. That's how Yudhishthira Maharaj, and then again Abhimanyu, because Abhimanyu died. So that's how Parikshit Maharaj became the king. And the point here is, I was just thinking, Yudhishthira Maharaj did not want to become the king. We are talking now about leaving the kingdom and retiring and going back home, back to Godhead. But initially, he didn't want to become the king, right? What happened? When he was not, he was very, morose and dejected and didn't want to become the king. Anyone remembers what happened? Who inspired or gave him instructions to become the king?
It's Narad Muni. Narad Muni.
Many great sages
Bhishma Dev.
tried, but Bhishma Dev, yes, the Bhishma Suti. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes. So then Krishna was ready to leave Hastinapur. That whole thing, and Yudhishthira Maharaj was made the king. Yeah, and the whole purpose, Krishna came personally to enthrone Yudhishthira Maharaj as the king. Otherwise, he didn't have to come. All his energies, his glance was sufficient to do so many things. But just to make Yudhishthira Maharaj the king, Krishna personally came down. So, and we also read in the 10th chapter of this first canto how the kingdom was when Yudhishthira Maharaj was the king. Uh, it's described in the 10th chapter, the 4th, 5th, 6th verses. I think how, milk was overflowing from the cows and moistening the grass. Seasons were so perfect, they were not troubling. And the summers were perfect, the winters, no disease, no pandemics. So this is, it reminds yad acharati shrestha tatta deva itara. When the king is ideal, kingdom and citizens, everybody will be very happy. Although it was Dwapar Yuga, and it appeared like Satya Yuga, in terms of, because wherever Krishna is there, wherever his pure devotees like Yudhishthira are there, everything is perfect. But when Krishna disappeared, the day before, up to that time, was like Satya Yuga. Everything was nice in terms of, then next day was Kali Yuga, and then immediately Yudhishthira Maharaj makes the decision, I don't want to be here anymore. 36 years he ruled so wonderfully, the Bhagavatam describes, yeah. But here, Yudhishthira Maharaj had to make a decision that time was not favorable. Kali was coming, you know. And if we see, the Pandavas were so wonderful devotees of the Lord, pure devotees of the Lord, uh, so attached to the Lord. At the same time, we're so very responsible. So many difficulties, so many miseries came. They all were together. And we can also see so much love they had, so much responsibility they felt for example, Bhima. In the case of Draupadi, all the vows he took, how he was going to destroy Dushasan and others, but in spite of all this, we see as soon as Krishna left, they are ready to leave. Immediately, he made Parikshit Maharaj the king, and he was ready to leave. And along with Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima and others also were ready to leave. Unlike a lot of times we see in today's day and age, so much thinking has to be done for a leader or a king to quit or to leave. I was just thinking, even, in small homes, especially in India, at least in my limited experience, I was seeing, even if a father, he may have a small, some property or assets, whatever he may have, if he does not properly divide, then hell breaks loose after the passing away of the father. Sometimes so much fighting and so many things happen, so you can see that Yudhishthira Maharaj, he did not even think. Like one example Prabhupada gives, this one person was in the hospital, was close to leaving his body, and he asked the doctor, please give me 4 more years. I haven't done this, I haven't done that. But here we see Yudhishthira and other Pandavas. Why? Because they were so attracted to the Lord. At the same time, they acted very responsibly towards the citizens, towards the kingdom, and towards each other. But the topmost attraction was the Lord. And that's why, and you can see this, as soon as he left, they felt there is no business for us here. And then Prabhupada writes in today's purport, in the last line, sorry, I'm jumping to the end, but he says, also, retired old gentlemen should take lessons from him and leave home for spiritual realization before being forcefully dragged away to meet death. When I was reading this purport, it reminded me of Dhritarashtra. Yeah, how when he was the king, Vidura, who was the minister, he could only give advice to him, about the kingdom and some moral advices as a well-wisher. But after the war was over, Vidura became a sannyasi, and he gave strict instructions and literally had to drag him out from the palace of the Pandavas. He couldn't understand this. And Prabhupada also explains that Subhadra and Draupadi were also there in the case here with the Pandavas, with Yudhishthira. But no, one has to fly their own plane. Subhadra and Draupadi didn't think who will take care of us. So, why should a king? Then Prabhupada also explains in one of his lectures, why should a king retire? Why should a leader retire? A lot of times, I think especially in the context here, if I am right, at the time when Prabhupada wrote this, or around that time, I think, the Prime Minister of India was Jawaharlal Nehru. And then how, he was so old, but he didn't leave his position, and, he eventually died of heart attack, if I'm not wrong, or some health condition that he was forced to leave. Not that he retired, when he found a young person to replace. No, So Prabhupada explains that we should not wait till the last moment. That where Prabhupada writes in the purport that one should not rot in the dark well of household life till one is dragged out by the will of Yamaraj. We should not wait. We keep moving forward, to the different ashrams, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. It's our responsibility. Yeah. Not that we just get stuck with one thing till the end of our life. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, another interesting thing here is, he's not thinking what will happen without me. This thought sometimes comes, or what will happen if I am not here, if I am not there, what will happen to him, her, them, this, that. Oh, he is not thinking, oh, Parikshit is not yet fully trained. I have not put him under my, supervision, or, after I leave. No. Yudhishthira Maharaj very well understood that Kala, or time, is under the Lord's direction, including all of us. The point is, he knew very well he was not the controller, that he was not the doer. This reminds of the Bhagavad Gita words from the 3rd chapter. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. When I think, oh, I am the reason for everything that's happening, it's because of me, I am the doer. If without me nothing will move, then we get entangled. Yeah. But if we think and act in such a way that I am the instrument, then that is the right way. That, truth is that we have to do everything responsibly. To the best of my ability, I should do my service. And I should do it as a responsibility in order to please the Lord and his devotees. That if I don't do this service, then it can cause a difficulty to the other devotees, and it's not pleasing to the Lord if I don't do this seva properly. And that if for whatever reason, if I am removed or replaced also from a particular service, I should not think that nobody can do this service. If I can't do, nobody. No. You should think that, everybody, I am replaceable. And in fact, the other person can do better than me. And that I am very insignificant. Like we use a pen. If it doesn't work properly, we change the pen. Of course, we want the pen to work properly. So this is one very important point, that Yudhishthira Maharaj did not wait till the fag end of his life. No, as soon as he found an immediate replacement, he left. Yeah. In the 7th canto also, in chapter 4, Yudhishthira Maharaj is inquiring from Narada Muni. The reason I'm bringing this verse also is because Prabhupada talks about the Pandavas are all pure devotee. Maharaj Yudhishthira was a great devotee of the Lord. And there was no necessity of his being afraid of the age of Kali. But he preferred to retire from active household life and prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. And the Pandavas are eternal companions of the Lord. Yeah. But so much humility Yudhishthira Maharaj displays that we see, in that discussion, or when he inquires from Narada Muni, is the Lord partial? And in that context, Narada Muni explains that to protect Prahlad Maharaj, Narsimadev personally he saved him, And after hearing that whole pastime, Yudhishthira Maharaj, out of his natural humility, says, "Oh, Prahlad Maharaj is such a great devotee. And Lord, he incarnated personally. And oh, I am so lowly. I am so wretched. I am so unfortunate. I don't have that." And then Narada Muni immediately says, you Pandavas are so fortunate. Krishna came as an ordinary person and he did so many activities in such a friendly manner, and at that time, Maharaj Yudhishthira was performing Rajasuya Yajna. And anyone remembers what was Krishna's service in that Rajaswaya Yajna?
Washing the feet of the attendees.
Yes, washing the feet of all the guests. Thank you, Prabhuji, who came for that yajna. Although this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Atma Rama, but because of the pure devotion of his pure devotees, like the Pandavas, Lord is very attracted and does any kind of services. The point is, such a great devotee is Yudhishthira Maharaj. Krishna personally came to kill the Kauravas and enthrone Yudhishthira Maharaj as the king. And now, after ruling for about 36 years, if I'm not wrong, he decided to retire. And Prabhupada explains in the purport why he retired. He's supposed to protect the citizens from Kali. And that is the responsibility of the king, right? Who is a king? A king is a Naradeva, meaning he's a representative of the Lord. For the citizens, he is a representative of God. Just like for devotees, disciples, spiritual master is a representative of God. So the question is, if he is a representative, if he knows Dharma so very well, then why did he retire from his rulership? So how do we understand that? So many, for that we also, Prabhupada explains in the purport, just to set an example. And the pure devotees, they know Buddha, thoroughly experienced. He's very intelligent. And he wanted to show all of us an example that once a grown-up person is available to take over, then immediately give up. And Prabhupada also explains, same thing, why Parikshit Maharaj, we read why Parikshit Maharaj retired, so early when he was cursed, could have easily counteracted the curse. Yeah. So here for Yudhishthira Maharaj, because Parikshit Maharaj was fully trained, he is a great devotee and he could deal with the kingdom. Yeah. Also, Prabhupada explains that Yudhishthira Maharaj tried his best, or he did all he could do to hold the Kali. Symptoms of Kali started right at the end of the war. He understood it is time for Kali to manifest fully. This is course of time. So he, as a great emperor, he chose to retire and become a great example for people in his kingdom. And through this example, it's my understanding Prabhupada is also teaching all the leaders, the politicians, that you should not stick to that post until you're forced to quit. And this situation comes, I was thinking in my life also a lot of times, so many different circumstances come, and I don't know if I'm acting perfectly as per, I'm acting not perfectly, I'm acting as per scriptures or not. So many times this question comes. Anyone gets this question anytime? Do you feel like this? What should I do? Is this right or wrong? Should I do it or not? What should I do?
Yes, it does.
So, Prabhupada, we can see from Prabhupada's example that Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. So many times he got the dream that his spiritual master, his divine grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Thakur, coming in his dreams and ordering him to take sannyas. And Prabhupada was apparently disturbed. And he was consulting various of his god brothers, Tirtha Maharaj, Sridhar Maharaj, Keshav Maharaj, his own sister, lot of consultation with other Vaishnavas, So, and we can see his family situation was not that easy either, his sons, his wife, it was not easy. He was also worried what will happen to his wife, and Prabhupada, through his personal example, if I'm not wrong, that he transferred the flat onto his wife's name, so responsibly before he took sannyas. So the point is, Prabhupada was contemplating how to be responsible, even when we see that she was not fully favorable for Krishna consciousness. And after carefully considering all this, Prabhupada made the decision. Yeah. So we also, when we face such situations, so my understanding is to take guidance from the scriptures, to consult the spiritual master, to consult the Shiksha Guru, to consult with Vaishnavas, and take a responsible decision. Just some points I wanted to share, but I think the focus here is how as soon as Kali and the symptoms started to manifest, Yudhishthira Maharaj decided to leave the kingdom without waiting for too long. Although he was an ideal king, he ruled for 36 years so wonderfully. Everything was in abundance. There was nothing that people wanted. Everything was in excess. Yeah. And at that time, he chose to retire. And not because he was afraid of the age of Kali, but because, these are eternal associates of the Lord, and he didn't want to be there. He always wanted to be in the association of the Lord. So he made the necessary arrangements and prepared for his journey back home, back to Godhead. And through this, Prabhupada is teaching a lot of practical lessons and examples, both for politicians, householders, individuals, that one should not rot in this dark well of household life, or whether if you're in a household life, whether if you're a politician, that you should take voluntary retirement and should allow young generation, young leaders to take up. So I'll stop here. Please forgive me for any mistakes, and please correct me if I have stated anything incorrectly. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, primarily for my own purification. And I hope there was something in there that was pleasing for you all. Hare Krishna.
If anybody has any questions or comments or realizations, please just unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Yes, Vishnuvada Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So this purport, it kind of exposes our current political situation. I think the current president is 80 years old, and the previous president is some of the mid, 76 or 77 years old. And so this is the situation in the world, because, well, one thing is because they have no understanding or appreciation that there's something other than just this material world in the body. So, Maharaj Yudhishthira knew there was life beyond the body, and there was a better place than this place where there's avarice and violence and all that stuff. So he could make a plan to get out, whereas the current politicians are, as you mentioned, are completely in ignorance of the situation of the soul and life after death, and there being an eternal realm. So that's important for us to remember. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, to leave. And another point is that you were speaking about how around Hyderabad, the things are so, the political system or the managerial system is so corrupt to be straightforward is very difficult. You have to be part of the corruption, right? People there, you said they learn how to be corrupt, and then they can get through the system, right? Something like that, you
Oh,
said.
yes, very much. It's all bribing, corruption, and threatening and bullying,
Yeah,
This is what
so then,
works.
I mean, I don't think it's just in Hyderabad. It's probably as cited by Maharaj Yudhishthira, it's going on all over the world. And a greater concentration or lesser concentration, but the same kinds of things are there. He said, like, it's in the state. That was one thing he mentioned. So that means the leaders, if the whole point is everybody's, there's avarice and bribery, greed and corruption, so that the leaders must be the most corrupt, the most greedy and the most corrupt. Unfortunately, that's a situation, and we see that in all areas of society. There's recently, of course, you hear about CEOs of medical or pharmaceutical facilities who raise the price of, say, insulin or some other drug, from 100 times. Why do they do that? People need, say they're diabetic and they need insulin. Well, the cost of insulin skyrocketed, at least in 10 years, triple, quadruple. Why do they do that?
Greed.
Greed, that's it. You already have enough, but you want more. And in so many areas, you'll see, like, there was a plan to privatize Social Security. You know what that means? Privatize means give it to the, so people will invest it in Wall Street, and who's going to make the money off of that? The people in Wall Street. During the First World War, the United States went to war, and then it came out afterwards that weapons manufacturers and all kinds of corporations were selling things like nuts and bolts to the United States government for use during the war, and they were charging, because they could get away with it, for one bolt, $50. That was back then. So when people found out about it, they got really mad, and they wanted this was after. So that's one of the reasons they didn't want to get involved in the Second World War. But the same thing goes on. As soon as something is privatized, then why do they privatize things? So the person who's then becomes in charge can extort the population. So this is going on more and more. You'll see things are going with that. Interestingly, not only when Lord Krishna and the Pandavas were there, but also the history of Bengal is very interesting. That there was a traveler from Europe, Italian doctor, who traveled through the Orient, China, India, Pakistan, what's now Pakistan, and other parts of the Middle East, and he said there is no place as opulent and wonderful as Bengal. He said this was right after Lord Chaitanya. So that's very interesting, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, or Sanjay said, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. What is it? How does it go? Tatra Shri Rajayo Bhuti. Yeah, wherever there's Krishna, wherever there's Arjuna, there's all opulence, splendor, victory. Yeah. So same thing took place during the time of Lord Chaitanya. Things were, it was wonderful. Material necessities were not an issue. But now, as Pali Yoga progresses, we're still in a kind of a not such a bad state. It's too bad, but it's getting worse, and it'll get worse as we go along. So it behooves us to make a plan to get out of here, because we know there's a better place. How are we going to make that plan? Yes. Hare Krishna.
Chanting Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, it's scary when you read what is going to happen, by the end of this Kali Yuga. And there's no devotees. That humans will be eating their own children, right? Yes, Dronacharya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Very nice class. Vishnu-Gada Prabhu was speaking. It made me think back in, I guess it was 2016, when Donald Trump got elected. This idea of, what everybody kind of thought was kind of underground as far as corruption kind of came to the public forefront. And he made a statement one time during a debate about taxes. And he was claimed like, hey, you don't pay your taxes. And he says, that's right, I don't. And that's what makes me smart. And like for the first time, what everybody thought was like, okay, you know what, that's kind of going on behind the scenes. There's always corruption and loopholes and things like that. It's now on public display. And then when he further got challenged and says, well, we're going to come after you and we're going to get your tax returns and and he says, no, you won't. Because you're taking advantage of the same, basically corrupt system that I'm taking advantage of. And I think it escalated in many people's minds, just how, greed and corruption is just so prevalent. And it's been going on, but I think it's in everybody in the forefront. I think the veil has been somewhat taken away. Just how prevalent it is. We have to certainly guard against it, as much as possible. And the other point you were making, as far as like retiring and stepping away, staying connected because of attachment is something that we see a lot of. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, people remain in positions, especially leadership positions, oftentimes because they feel, without me, nothing will, things will fall apart. Or they may be attached to their position of power. And maybe that's really their only sense of self-worth. We see in some governments, they have term limits where they, basically you can serve for 1 or 2 terms or 3 terms set. And then you see some where it's like you're the king or you're the pope and you're basically there until you die. And I think the example here with Maharaj Yudhisthira is the, one that we need to follow. Detachment, empowerment of the next generation, and then also seeking shelter of a higher purpose. But we see it also, even within our society. We see many sannyasis, GBCs. Oftentimes they're, and maybe it's out of necessity. We see it out in for leadership in GBC areas. They consumed with a lot of managerial responsibilities. I know the GBC is working on reorganizing zones to make it more travel friendly and more accessibility and stuff. But and also ISKCON's very young in this regards. But I just think the idea of how to leave a service, respectfully, with dignity, to the point where you're not forced out of a service, or just forced out of a position of authority, is something I think that we're still trying to figure out, how to do that. Anyway, just some thoughts that I had there. It was a good class, very thought-provoking. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for raising these important questions. I I am not qualified to answer this question about when, because I'm not the right person to answer that question. Maybe some senior Vaishnavas who are here can shed some light on that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm not going to try and attempt to answer that question, not a senior at all. But one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about your experience in India, my brother is also trying to work on a situation almost similar to what you are going through. And one of the things he was saying is, when it is time for me to check out, I hope I will not do it the way all these other elderly people are doing, because some of them are being very, but I think then the question comes to the way you were asking, and these questions come up, these situations come up for all of us. And at that time, we need to know who to go to for advice, for wisdom. And so that is also very important. Yes, people should retire in a timely fashion, but we also need to get guidance. And that is very, very important. And for that reason, we need, the system that you were describing is, the king was protecting, but he was getting guidance from somebody who had the wisdom. They were listening to the brahmanas, they were listening to the elders who had experience to guide them. And so it is a balance, and I think each one of us needs to answer. A lot of times what happens is when I am asking that question, I'm thinking I doing it right. It's the other person that's not doing it right. So like my brother was saying, I just hope I don't do it this way. When his time, because those people who are making those mistakes they never said, I'm going to hold on to my position forever and ever, right? They also said the same thing my brother is saying now. But when that time comes for us, will we know? And so that is why I think it is so important to get guidance from these scriptures and people who have understood these scriptures. My 2 cents. Thank you very much, Prabhu, and good luck to you with your efforts in helping your father.
I had the same experience. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had the same experience with my retirement, Prabhu. And when I said, I don't want to retire now, I still have some more years to go. My husband said, you will go from here to straight up. You won't retire. You won't, after retirement, you won't live. So why do you want to say, let us go back? So that's how we went back to India. So I got retired early. But what happened, that India situation, we thought something and God has done something. We don't know what's going to happen. Like you're saying that, straightforward where we don't want to make a person to get out or something like that. We cannot do that because we are little Krishna conscious and we have some God feeling. But people are not doing that. They just don't think that. So what to do like that? We don't know. My son was saying that he's struggling with that. We are born and brought up like just God fear and God consciousness. And they're talking about gundas that just kick him out, and police is helping. Cops are helping him. Something we are handling like that. So
Yes,
where will you go? We go to court, they are not helping. We go to cops, no, they are not helping. They're buying everybody. So those kind of things happens, and not only Hyderabad, everywhere is there like that.
The way I have, sorry, please finish up. The way I have understood, Mataji, is I have taken spiritual guidance from advanced Vaishnavas. I have shared the situation to the best of my abilities, unbiased way. And then, you do your best and then accept whatever it is as our own karma. as the will of the Lord and move on. You know? So there's nothing you can do about it. It's a good lesson to remind us that nothing is permanent and we are not the controllers. And, if it works out, then, we try our best to see how we can use it in Krishna's service. If not, we accept it as our own karma. Is that right, Vishnugada Prabhu? Is that the best way to look at it?
Sure. Of course, I'm sure that both of you think about perhaps using that property for Christian service. That might be another thing. Srila Prabhupada, in dealing with the Juhu property, he was dealing with a corrupt politician, but he knew how to extract it first to the service of Krishna. That's a little different.
Yes, thank you. And going back, Dronacharya Prabhu, is he there?
Yes, Prabhu.
I was just thinking about your comment earlier, I thought I just will repeat, or maybe I missed that point is, when I'm doing the service, whatever that service is, to do with the consciousness that whatever position I am is to see if, to train and teach other devotees and bring them up to the point where they can do those services, and whenever they are ready to give the services to them, and then when it is taken away forcibly, then we see it as the Lord's arrangement, and that we pray that the other person does a better service than us, and whatever service is assigned to us, we try to do to the best of our ability and take it as a responsibility and serve to the best ability to please the Lord and his devotees. Yeah, that way, when we are at that position, then we try to help others and get to that position. So if we have to leave, then the services don't get affected. Was that what you are referring to or alluding to, Prabhuji?
Yes, I think that perspective is a very healthy one. And it's very practical because it's something that, both in the secularly as well as spiritually, we go through different changes in life. These changes we should be prepared for. It doesn't have to always, it can be something that's celebrated. It doesn't have to be a painful thing. And oftentimes, because of our attachments, I think it becomes a very painful thing. And that has to do with our level of consciousness.
And then seek guidance from senior Vaishnavas.
Of course.
And ask the same question, right? Is it time to leave?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, it's 9.
That's very nice.
Thank you, Prabhu. 9:05. Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.